Done. Live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, live everywhere. A beat with a weird sound coming out of my mouth. My voice is not fixed yet, right? My voice is not fixed yet. So we're ready, folks. If you can hear me, say something. Something. That's always, the joke always works. Good morning, thinkers, says Mr. Satish. Good morning, Mr. Satish. If you can hear me, should we begin? It's already 8:09. If you can hear me, confirm, and we will begin. Good morning, says Mr. Rajakumar. Good morning, Mr. Kumar. How are you doing? How's the book? Have you started reading? Are you having fun? Mr. Satish says yes. So we will begin. Audible, says Mr. Abhishek Sharma. Good morning, Mr. Sharma. Perfect. So let's begin. The show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. Right? The thing that makes everything better. It informs us, inspires us. It's just amazing. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go. But before we go, we got to follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug or glass or tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Healing. Healing. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Mr. Raju Kumar says the book is hilarious, totally enjoying it. Yay! So happy to hear that. So happy to hear that. So there is a news on Tata Group. Tata Group board, the key members essentially met Mr. Amit Shah, the central government. This is an evolving story. This is a developing story. Tata Group is going through some weird turbulence because of infighting in the group. There are concerns about whether the group should list the Tata Sons entity or not, the chief trust basically, the central pillar of the whole Tata empire, whether it should be listed or not. Why this discussion? Because Shapurji Palanji has a lot of debt hanging, and Shapurji Palanji has about 19%, 18 point some percent of Tata Sons trust. If the group lists, it will be very easy for the group, the Palanji group, to essentially pay their debt. If it doesn't, they'll be under serious problems, right? So they want to list. They want the group to list. The group doesn't want to list because listing, it's a lot of trouble. You don't want to list, man. Listing is a lot of trouble. Unless you absolutely have to. you'd like to have that control, you'd like to have that independence, that long term view, which a publicly listed company sometimes cannot afford, right? I'm not saying listing is bad, but the group doesn't want it. A lot of people don't want it. Bloomberg is not a listed company, even though it's the central of the whole financial world, right? Uh, Zerodha doesn't want to list either, and so on and so forth. Zoho said recently that we won't be a listed company ever, and people said why, and they said we are a long term R&D kind of a company. If we have to abide by quarterly pressures, our company will suffer, because a lot of projects that we invest in, they have a very long term horizons, which public markets cannot appreciate. So Tata doesn't want to list, but there's a lot of problems in the group. And since Tata is effectively India's largest conglomerate, $180 billion, uh, and it has interests in every industry, so it's very key to the country. Central government key figures are stepping in to make sure that nothing bad happens. And Mr. Home Minister and Madam Finance Minister have said, do what it takes. Well, that doesn't solve any problems, right? Do what it takes. How does that solve any problem? What is that key insight? If you're going through a crisis, right, and if somebody comes to you and says, do what it takes, how would you appreciate that advice, right? I wouldn't. But anyway, that's what Tata Group got. Tata Group is also in trouble because of the whole Tata digital play. They're running out of money. Uh, After burning 17,000 crores, Tata says that they're looking at raising 4,000 more, right, to make sure that the group has some net value of 8,000 crores, which is less than $1 billion. So group has really screwed itself, the Tata Digital Group. So they bought a lot of good companies, right? They bought Big Basket, they bought 1MG, they bought Cult, and then they just shit on it. It's just like they just ruined those companies. Somebody had a brilliant idea. Some consultant said, "Sir, I got an idea, sir." And they were like, "What is this idea?" And he said, "Sir, we bought these terrific companies, right? So what we should do is we should make a super app and then promote that super app instead of these companies that we bought for billions of dollars." And like, whoa, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a good idea. So how much is this gonna cost? Sir, after we've acquired all these companies, it's gonna cost like $2 billion, right? And then it's not probably not gonna work out because no super app has ever worked out in India. And super apps don't really work in India. They're a Chinese concept, more or less, right? But let's swing for 17,000 crores, sir. Let's swing it. Let's see what happens. And somebody says, "Oh, great! That sounds like a great idea." So we'll buy all these companies for billions of dollars, and then we'll just cover them up, make a new shitty super app, and then we'll promote that super app instead of these companies that we paid for, and then everything is gonna get screwed, right? And that's what they did essentially. So 16,000, 17,000 crore burnt, and all of those companies are not doing well. Uh, they're not healthy, despite like 1MG's healthy because Farmeasy died, but Big Basket has fallen off the ropes, and there's no clue on what gonna happen to Big Basket because the market is getting so crowded. Now, Big Basket was a pioneer. Basket was a market leading company, right? And they just shit on it. And if you remember, this is something that we talked about at Thinkers Frequency. I wrote an article 2 years, 3 years ago when Tata was investing money. So when Tata had planned the investment in a super app, I had written that this is not gonna work, right? So if you remember, like regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency obviously know this case study in depth, but it's just unbelievable, right? So that's what they did, and now they're basically coming out of that super app thing. Somebody must have come out with a brilliant idea. Said, instead of all of these 6 and 7 apps, right? These 6, 7 apps. So why would somebody download these 6, 7 apps? Let's just make one app, right? And we'll bind these together and one app, sir. That's the brilliant idea, sir. A person will just have to download one app, sir. And people like, yeah, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I wrote that article 2 or 3 years ago, people were chastising me. They were castigating me for advising Tata. They said, you really think you know more than Tata Group and all the consultants and all the advisors and everybody they have on the board, right? Do you think you have more insights? And I'm like, okay, let's wait and watch. I have those screenshots. I have those articles. It's just unbelievable. Any thoughts on why the super apps worked in China, like WeChat? Mr. Sumant Kumar. So I read an article about this, which makes a lot of sense. There are two reasons for it. Number one is a timing issue, and number two is a cultural issue. Okay, so why did super apps work in China, and why did they not work in India? Let's say number one is timing. When super apps came along, it was the beginning of the smartphone revolution in China, in the world, essentially, when these people were building it, right? And when the smartphone revolution was essentially beginning, there were limiting factors to how many apps a phone could download. There were limiting factors on storage. There were limiting factors on RAM. And so the smartphone was itself a very limited device, right? Which essentially made sense for one app to be as functional as possible instead of a lot of apps, because the overall technology itself had a close ceiling, right? Uh, but as smartphones developed, as storages developed, as capabilities of the device developed, it just became as easy, if not more, to switch between apps instead of switching within an app. You understand? So, how easy it is to close one app right now and open another, right? It's as easy as navigating within the app, right? So, as the smartphone tech developed, right, the need for a super app essentially diminished. But that didn't apply to China because they came with this tech much, much earlier, right? So that is the timing reason of super apps working in China. Second reason is the Chinese, the cultural factor, right? Chinese scripts, if you look at Mandarin, if you look at Chinese way of, designing, it's anti-minimalist. So if you look at US apps, they are very pro minimalism. Okay, Chinese apps are pro maximalism, and that is a purely cultural preference, that they are like jagged to the brim, right? If you look at any Chinese, and that's basically, if you look at how the script is formed, right? The Chinese script itself, it's very pro maximalism, right? So Chinese don't have the people don't have an issue with things like cluttering and things like overwhelming information and so on and so forth. So that's the cultural reason. But even that wouldn't have applied if the timing reason had worked out. Right now, you apply an idea which worked 10 years ago because of some local settings, right? The technology settings, the cultural settings, and you think, hey, this makes sense. Now, if you look at fundamentals, right, uh, does it make sense uh, to invest in a super app when it's as easy, and if not more, to navigate within apps? No, it doesn't, right? No, it doesn't. Because if people can navigate within apps, you just make a string of pearls, right? You make a Tata set of apps, right? Number two, is it easier to promote a super app instead of promoting a unique offering, right? What is easier to promote? Big Basket or New, which also has Big Basket, which also has Tata MG, which also. So a lot of people might think like, hey, super apps are easier to promote, man. No, it's not the case, right? Because every product has something called an STP. STP, not the band, not the Stone Temple Pilots band, right? STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning, right? So every product, Cult Fit has a very different audience. 1mg has a very different audience, big basket has a very different audience. Yeah, sure, there must be an overlap, but it makes sense to target that particular audience in a very very specific kind of a way, right, with your own brand positioning, with your own say. Once you So it doesn't make sense to promote a super app by not promoting the constituent apps, let's say. And the third reason is, when you promote a super app, when you take the marketing budget away from Big Basket or 1mg or Click or whatever, right, and then you give it over to the super app, does it actually hurt the constituent apps? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It hurts the constituent. It's not just a bad idea because it doesn't work. It's a bad idea because it first doesn't work and then it hurts the constituent companies, right? So, what would have been a better idea, right? What would have been a better idea was that new, if you wanted to launch new, it would have been just a discounting platform for Tata Group. Okay? So people who love discounts, people who love deals, right? People who love those things, loyalty platform. New could be the loyalty product for Tata. So for whatever you buy from Tata, of Tata, for Tata, whatever, right? New is the product where you find deals. And then New would have been supporting Big Basket, 1mg, everybody by being the background loyalty platform, right? And that loyalty platform would have had its own marketing budget, like let's say 100 million budget, right? At max, right? And in those 100 million budget, that platform could have individually helped everybody and also been a profitable entity on its own, right? That would have been new. That would have been new. Wordplay, right? But they really killed everybody by bringing new to the forefront and just sidelining all the crown jewels that they paid for with money. Now, if you look at backward integration, a lot of people think that, hey, operations could have been integrated, right? A lot of back end, a lot of logistical plays could have been integrated. Now that is no problem, as long as users don't find problems, right? uh, Technology speaking as well, a loyalty platform would have been easier, a low risk high reward play, where somebody could just if they had problems with new, they would have had problems with new, right? But right now, if you since you made it a super app engulfing everything, if you had problems with new, you had problems with Big Basket, you had problems with Chroma, you had problems with 1mg. So essentially you concentrated all risk, diminished rewards, and you killed the jewels, man. Mr. Sumant Kumar says, got it, thank you. I think they might have thought of cross-selling their products on single app, like how Paytm PhonePe does. Yeah, yeah. How well has that worked out, by the way? Mr. Dipender Goyal, was right. He said India is not the nation of super apps. They want super brands, and that was very, very well said. Right? Very well said. So he said he also had the option of actually, Zomato integrated with whatever, like this Blinkit thing, right? And Hyperpure and so on and so forth, whatever. He said no, it's gonna be an independent play, right? District, everything, it's gonna be a brand by itself, because that brand has the freedom to operate on its own, and when it does, it leads to a lot of good things. It declutters and it stands on its own. So that was brilliant idea. Swiggy didn't do that, and it paid for it. And there was another thing I was going to say. Anyway, the super app thing, he was right. Mr. Goel was right. Yeah, so I was saying, when I used to write this, a lot of people, again, when you're thinking, when you're forming an argument, when you're actually engaging in an intellectual exercise, right? When you're thinking things, when you're predicting things, what is the worst argument? What is the worst argument? There are two worst arguments, right? Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency, remember those two worst arguments. It's not just one, but two. What are those two arguments? Number one, hey, these people know a lot, right? Authority bias. That these people know a lot. These consultants, these veterans, these experts know a lot. So I'll just outsource my thinking to these experts. If these people are saying something, they must be right, you must be wrong. That's authority bias. And number two is it worked in China, so it will work in here, right? That is analogy thinking. So instead of, so number one, authority bias. Hey, they know. So I don't have to do the thinking. They know. Number two, analogy thinking. It worked in China. Why would it not work here? Like every situation is different, and it's best to think from first principles, right? Build your argument from the ground, and it always makes sense. And that's a very good way to see where the thing is going. Moving on. World Bank has upped India's FY26 outlook to 6.5%. Earlier it was 6.3%, so they're saying we'll grow a bit faster, 0.2%. For FY27, they've cut it down a little. So they say FY27 is going to be 6.3% or something, right? What is that? Yeah, 0.2% to 6.3%. So FY27 is going to be 6. They say tariffs could be an issue, and if tariffs are an issue, it's going to hurt the Indian economy and so on and so forth. But tariffs are not going to be there forever, right? A lot of these projections are basically fugazi because they're rooted in assumptions which are bound to change, right? So moving on. 24,000 crore railways project gets cabinet nod. So railway, some government capex happening with railways. 24,000 crores. A lot of new lines coming on, right? Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Chhattisgarh. Existing railway network by 894 routes in kilometers. So railways are obviously very important for the country. We remember the logistics cost of railways, right? Now, we've discussed how logistics is very important. The amount you spend on logistics determines how fast things move, how easily things move. If you spend a lot of amount on logistics, it means you're inefficient. It means it's difficult and expensive to transport stuff. If it's difficult and expensive to transport stuff, it means that you're a slow growing economy. By definition, you cannot be a fast growing economy because you can't move the product, right? So what was the cost of railways? Old viewers of Thinkers Frequency remember, right? What was the cost of transporting per metric ton, per kilometer of railways, roadways, and airplanes, right? If you remember, say something because that's gonna help you understand the ramifications of the 24,000 crore investment in railways. We discussed it. How much does it cost per kilometer per ton to send stuff from railways? Mr. Bhandekar says 374.12. So I'm assuming he says 3 is railways, 12 is roadways, and 74 is airplanes, right? It's almost correct, sir, Mr. Bhandekar. Yeah, 62 was air cargo, I remember. 1.96 rupees per kilometer was railways, and 10 kilometers, about 11-12 kilometers, 12 rupees, sorry, was. So you're right, with 12 for roadways, 1.96 for railways, and 62 for airways. Yeah, so that's correct. Mr. Mr. Sharma is right, 100% right. So with that, the government, what does the government want to do? The government wants to reduce the GDP spend on logistics. It wants to bring it down from current 9%, 8% to 6%, 7%. Earlier it was 12%, right? 12% of your GDP is just going to transport stuff. Now that was a lot of money, right? Now it's come down to 8% according to the new findings. They want to bring it down to 7%, right? And that's the goal. So each percent of GDP you save on logistics, it has like 3 to 4 times of a multiplication factor, right? So 1% of GDP is what? $40 billion. India has a $4.2 trillion economy. So $42 billion is 1% GDP, right? If you save $40 billion is effectively 50 lakh crores. So if you can, as a nation, save 50 lakh crores, 1% of Indian GDP, on transporting stuff, right? Everything gets cheaper. Moving on. Sorry for my throat, guys. Cold drift maker violated several quality norms. This is regarding the, uh, you know, the cough syrup problem, which is leaving kids dead. Unfortunately, rest in peace. 12 kids, a lot of kids died in Rajasthan. Now 16 kids have died in Madhya Pradesh because of these cough syrups. So the government intervened. It said, 2 year olds, less than 2 year olds, should not have these cough syrups, histamines, and so on and so forth. There was EG play, right? Ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol. Diethylene glycol was the impurity which existed, which screwed everything up, right? So they found out some problems as far as their quality standards, manufacturing quality was considered. Now, if you remember, this is also a linked story. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we discussed how this relates to India's exports of cough syrups to sub-Saharan African nations like Gambia, Namibia, and a lot of kids died there as well, right? And this particular kind of a show uh, brings the entire country down, brings the entire country down, its reputation down. India likes to call itself as the pharmacy of the world. This screws everything up, right? So the government essentially made it a norm to for the MSMEs, drug manufacturers, to get upgradations. Now this industry came together and lobbied, said we cannot do these upgradations. We're gonna go under debt. We're gonna close. There are 4,500 MSMEs making drugs in India. They'll have to close and so on and so forth. So they came out saying that it'll take time for us to upgrade. Now this proves that all of those upgradations need to happen ASAP, right? Because otherwise it's just gonna be very, very sad. Moving on. Yeah, 24,000 crore worth railway projects. We've talked a lot about this, right? Four lines, a lot of lines there. Gondia, Donhagarh, uh, Itarsi, Bhopal, Vadodara, Ratlam, Vardhava, Bhuswal. In ideal case, there should have been stricter compliance post-African fiasco, but unfortunately, it happened again in India. Yeah, so that's where the compliance, and that's where the legality and the corruption bit comes to play, right? A lot of people openly violate norms, and what happens is a babu comes and he just takes money and everything just goes back to business, right? And that is a very, very big problem. So let's see how this happens. Moving on. By the way, since we have started talking about babus and corruption and everything, judges, right? An Indian CJI, Mr. Gavai, he got a shoe thrown at him by a 71-year-old lawyer, a PhD called Mr. Rakesh Kishore, right? And that became a national furor that, hey, somebody actually threw a shoe at CJI. And it was like a pretty calm person. He said, yeah, I did it. I was not inebriated. I was not drunk. I hadn't taken any sort of drugs. I did it on my own volition. And he gave whatever he gave as explanations, which were pretty interesting. But the point is that the whole judiciary is pretty in a very weird state, because you remember that fiasco that was happening with the Allahabad High Court judge. I mean, the Delhi High Court judge who got a lot of cash. He is still working. It's that matter has somehow died down, right? No impeachment proceedings, no news on that front. Also, the judge who was responsible for Mr. Atul Subhash's suicide, he had directly named, rest in peace, named her. She's gotten promoted. So a lot of those things are happening. In all of this, while this is happening in India, Mr. Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, the president of El Salvador, for background for the new viewers of Thinkers Frequency, used to be the most unsafe country in the world. Now it's the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. and it's because of a lot of things that the country's administration did to fix the whole thing. We've discussed a lot in depth, so we won't go again. But he said, when we were trying to fix the country, you know, judges came in the way, and we had to impeach all of those judges. And once we impeached those judges, we could fix the country, right? And that's what we discussed. The case study which we discussed was the power of incentives, right? How do incentives shape everything? So Mr. Naib Bukili said that what is the incentive for a tomato seller who has a normal life? He's just selling tomatoes. It's not a big business. He gets robbed by the end of the week by a mob, by a gang, right? What is the incentive for him to keep selling tomatoes if that gang member just flourishes, right? So there is no incentive for him to be an honest man. Uh, so he will join the gang. So you have to kill the incentives for bad behavior. You know, you've got to deter bad behavior, give incentives for good behavior, and that's how a country functions. India has a problem with judiciary because we reward bad behavior. Just imagine if that judge got promoted for openly, asking for a bribe, for openly, like a guy literally committed suicide, right? And she's promoted and she's giving judgments in a court of law, right? You can imagine. Like, she's a known crook, she's a fraud, she's a cheat, right? She's a loot, and she's getting promoted. So if that is what we see, what is the country gonna do? It's not obviously not gonna do good work, right? Everybody's gonna steal, and kill because they know that they can, at the end of the day, buy the judge. So internationally, Naib Bukele, Mr. Naib Bukele, the sir, he is talking about how US needs to reform its judicial systems. It needs to impeach judges, and at the same time you have these judicial stories coming out of India, and that's why it makes sense to connect things, right? Because a lot of things, uh, like US politics is very very similar to India, if you follow it, right? So that's happening. I'm hopefully not missing out on anything. Yeah. So the counterpart part of this story is, in one of the earlier episodes I had said that judiciary is fundamentally unfixable, right? Why I had said that was because the way to fix the judiciary, which is impeaching judges, right? It is also directly called as an undemocratic process. So let's say if you start impeaching judges left, right, and center, right? You start calling judges and then start impeaching them. It's a pretty big affair. Then the opposing forces, or the pro judges, let's say, community, right? Because they have a perspective, they believe judiciary should be independent, and if they see that the judiciary is getting castigated for whatever reasons, they'll say that the judiciary is no more an independent unit, right? It's actually influenced by the government because government is threatening to impeach judges all the time. So the way to fix judiciary is to actually risk calling yourself an authoritarian regime. So that was the counter view. If somebody, because we are not a political play, right? We don't discuss politics. So that's the counter view to the whole story. Moving on. India, Brazil talking. Linen fiber imports to be cut, exports to begin. So they're talking about farming, farmer supports, and so on and so forth. You remember we had talked about cotton farms and how we were importing cotton. Why we were importing cotton? Because the Mr. Sumant Kumar says, unfortunately, politicians hold the power to enforce law. Does anyone have ideas how we could change the incentive structure? As citizens of this country, what can we do to put political pressure? Well, we did. The customs thing, the Wintrack, Mr. Praveen Ganeshan, he did a great job, but he actually had to write a tweet, right? And it looked like it was a forced tweet. He said, the government has concluded a fair and free investigation on this matter. I'm happy, and so on. Like, literally, they made him, they put a gun to his head, they made him write it. Moving on. Uh, okay. So India basically is looking at cutting imports of linen, exports to begin. India and Brazil are also talking as far as the deals are considered, right? Moving on, there is some market. Profit growth, market info. Profit growth to stay in double digits. Select few to lead the show. Revenue growth seen below 10% for sixth quarter, but H2 to reflect GST shine. So this is about India Inc. It's the earnings preview. We've talked about the earnings report, right? Last quarter earnings we discussed, they were dismal. And because they were bad, there were a lot of news about how Indian equities look very expensive, right? And FPIs have been continually selling. The only way to reverse that narrative was for the India Incorporation to actually show some earnings flips, right? Earnings growth. That's exactly what we're gonna see uh, in this particular quarter. However, the magic, when will the magic come? As discussed, as predicted, the magic will come in this October, November, December quarter, right? Because August, September, July, August, September, that was a quarter, that was an okay quarter. However, the GST rationalization thing led to a lot of deferred purchases. Now, deferred purchases meant that all the purchases essentially got clobbered together after 22nd September, which is why whatever earnings that these people come out with for the September quarter, they're not going to be that green, right? They're going to be okay, but they're not going to be that green. The real green thing is going to happen in October, November, December. So the January reports that you're going to see, that's going to be awesome, right? Moving on. Steady returns. Fourth consecutive quarter, while revenue may fail to grow above 10% for the sixth quarter in a row. So while you might see a lot of dumb, writings come on the internet, and they're just painting a picture. Oh, these reports, like look at the earnings, they are bad, and so on and so forth. Just don't listen to those people. They don't have context, right? This is what I told you. It's gonna. Auto, metals, pharma, cement is set to start. Muted quarter by banking and finance companies to weigh. Now, this is the last quarter where banking essentially doesn't give some good news. The banking will start giving good news in this particular quarter, October, November, December, as predicted like 100 days ago, right? So we saw all the quarters and we said this is going to happen 3 quarters later, and that's exactly what's going to happen now, right? We're still early, but just notice, wait and watch. uh, RBI proposes bank provision 100%. 100% bank provisions. ECL framework. ECL is expected credit loss framework, instead of the incurred credit loss framework where you incur a loss and then you provision, right? Instead of that, you're going to project, right? Expected credit loss provision. And what that means is, for lenders, asset classes under a new expected, that's okay. 100% provisions against unsecured loans after 1 year, and 100% provisions for other loans after 4 years. So 100% provisions for unsecured loans after 1 year itself, right? According to the ECL play. This is very, very necessary, because in a lot of ways, this is a global standard, and it's going to help uh, uh, the banking play to be more, let's say, robust, right? So what happens is, currently banks use something called incurred credit loss model. They make provisions after the loan goes bad, right? Now with expected credit loss, they'll make provisions before the loan goes bad. So they'll anticipate losses early, right? So that so they'll have to set aside the full value of the bad loan 100% once they expect this to go bad, right? So performing assets, unsecured farm loans, and everything, this is what happens. I hope that's clear. We've discussed this, I guess, yesterday. Yeah, so no, or day before yesterday maybe. Moving on. Opportunity undervalued private bank index. Valuations dipped below 10-year average. So private banks have not been doing well. We've discussed that. And there is a report which says Is it an opportunity to buy private banks now that valuations have dipped below the 10-year average, and things might just get better? So is it an opportunity? All right. And analysts say only those who understand volatility should opt for these, exposed to concentration risk. So, as we discussed, whatever we said, according to that, it makes sense. But these people say there's concentration risk. Of course, there is concentration risk. And banking is highly regulated and dependent on foreign factors, a lot of alien factors. So, they're right. However, good times are going to be there for banking, Indian banking soon. Moving on. Oracle's earnings came out, they were not good. So they basically halted the Wall Street rally. That's okay. Ex-IndusInd banker traded on Kesoram Ultratech deal info. Family members made over 32 crores. So IndusInd Bank is a perpetual, dumpster fire truck for a long time. It's been ever since the forex crisis came forward, and that is continuing. A lot of whistleblower action. So some new report has come in which says the new CEO is trying to regain lost ground. Forex derivative lost for years. So there's the deal where these people essentially, had shady transactions, which is coming out. And a lot of it is going to come out, so no surprise there. By the way, speaking of forex transactions, Japan's 30-year yield, bond yields, have come to 3.3%, which is the highest ever. Right? So what happens when Japan's yields go up? It becomes a problem because Japan had zero interests for a very, very long time. Now what happens when you have zero interest? So people used to buy in Japan, Japanese yen, right? And they used to invest outside, and then they used to return Japanese yen as it is, and that used to be the forex kind of a profitable trade, right? So because Japan has zero interest, you borrow yen, right? You take that money out, use a currency swap or whatever you invest, wherever you invest, and then when it comes to maturity, you return the same amount of yen back, right? At that time. So a lot of Japanese money essentially went to all sorts of places. Now what happens is when that yield goes up, right? When they raise the interest rate, now suddenly you have to return more money to Japanese people, right? I mean the banks. Now when you have to return more, the profit on this particular deal goes down, right? And a lot of people suddenly start moving money, and that was the core reason why IndusInd Bank essentially faltered, right? So that Japanese yield is going up and up. By the way, Japan is also the lady prime minister that Japan has got. She's very right wing. She says we're gonna kill immigration. A lot of bad people have entered the country, and they're all gonna go back, right? Pretty interesting. Moving on. Some banking deals happening. Sahara Star Hotel debt. Reserve Bank is in no hurry to launch digital currency, CBDC. It always seemed like a bad idea, personally. CBDC, the idea was after cryptocurrency became very fashionable. Every country's thought of their own digital currencies, right? They didn't make any sense, but a lot of countries were climbing up on the fact. Now, not so much. Not so much. Right? Moving on. I hope I'm not missing out on anything. Deposit tokenization pilot to be set in motion on October 8. Right? Digital representation of assets such as deposit stocks, bonds that are stored on a blockchain. Well, quite a related piece. Adani has raised 1,000 crores in NCDs to refinance a debt. That's okay. There is a whole play about the new airport. We've talked about this, right? Navi Mumbai airport. The entire country essentially ferries how many passengers in a year? 1.3 crore passengers in a year, right? 1.3 crore passengers in a year. That's what, uh, or was it 1.3 crore in a month? How many passengers did India's airlines actually ferry last month? I'm confused if it was 1.3 crore in a year or was it 1.3 crore in a month. We discussed this, but what matters is the Navi Mumbai airport is gonna have 20 million people. 20 million is 2 crore people in a year. No, was it 20 lakh? I'm confused about the numbers. Can anybody help me with the numbers? How many people did we total air passengers India last year? 350 million. That's 35 crores, right? Domestic passengers 22 crores. That's 22 crores. So that's 1.3 crores per month, right? 1.3 crores per month here, I remember. So we ferry 1.3 crore passengers per month, and 20 million of them are gonna get added per year by just Navi Mumbai Airport, and that's just gonna be FY27. After FY27, the capacity will be further increased. So this is obviously very important. It's basically like making a new city. They're making a new city, and it's a very very big project, very big project, very very consequential. Right. Moving on. Auto sales accelerate in Navratri. We talked about this. 34% rise during 9-day period. Three wheelers construction gear sales slide in September. So that's okay. We've talked enough about it, right? You don't need an explanation on that. People expect 9% salary hike in 2026, according to an Aon report. That's basically an average wage hike for Indian workers, right? On average, are likely to get 9%. And we have inflation of what? 2.6%, right? No, yeah, 2.6%, the core inflation. And that's great. That's great. So a lot of people say 2.6% inflation is a lie because, inflation doesn't count a lot of things. Yeah, we know, right? But the 2.6 inflation percentage, whatever it counts as far as core inflation is considered, it's basically representative of the basket of an average human in the country, right? So just because somebody has a lot of home loans on their head, they should be counted in the inflation index? Not really, right? Because the average basket is dependent on food. That's why food is majorly driving the inflation numbers, right? So inflation numbers are not a lie. Yes, they can sometimes be divergent from the realities that you see, right? But it's an aggregate thing, right? So it makes sense. Moving on. So point is 9% salary hike against a reasonable inflation number signals good news, right? Even though household debt is going up. So the RBI, one of the finance figures said that we are raising our household debt, but at the same time, we have cut the GST. So what should a person do first? Should he pay his debt or would he consume first? Right? If household debt is up, right, and he gets some free money in the form of savings, would he first pay his debt or would he first buy new things? Because if he buys new things, it's gonna be great, right? Private capex, consumption, and so on and so forth. But if he pays his debt, it's just gonna be good for the banking system. But the problem is the banking system is already looking good, right? So that was a very, very good concern. What do you think should happen first? If somebody has a household debt and if they get a free money, right, what would they do first, according to you? Moving on. A lot of geopolitical chit chat, right? Gold has once again gone up. Inched higher, extending rally fueled by US government shutdown. So we discussed the history of gold yesterday. I got a lot of messages. People really like that explanation. Well, I'm glad. Gold is rising. That means people see that there's some sort of financial trouble coming. If a financial trouble comes, the gold keeps rising. Gold was last rising a lot in 2003, 4, 5, right? And it kept rising till 2012, 2013, and that's when it started falling, and now it's going up. So some or the other day you might see something bad happening, right? uh, and that's what determines goals prospects, at least in the near term. So if there is, so uh, the philosophical way of looking at it is, you don't know when the crash is gonna come, right? You can't say when the crash is gonna happen. You not be like, right now the market is heating up. The crash is gonna be later, right? That's not the way to look at it, because what if the market crashes today, right? I hope it doesn't, God forbid. But what if it crashes today? If it crashes today, you're done, right? You're done. So what Nassim Taleb sir says essentially is that you cannot predict when a black swan will happen, but you can safeguard yourself at the possibility of it. You understand? I'll say it again. So you cannot predict when a black swan is going to happen, but you can safeguard yourself from the possibility of it. So, what is the way to safeguard yourself from the possibility of an imminent crash, which happens today, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a quarter from now, maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, is to actually hedge in the event. What happens if the market gets wiped off tomorrow, like 20, 30%, 40%, right? All your holdings become half of what they are right now. What happens then? The gold will be up, right? So it makes sense to pair your holdings, not take the more money that market is offering, and once everything is down, then you can bring it up, right? So that's just Nassim Taleb sir's advice in general. That's his body of work: Anti-Fragile, Black Swan, Fooled by Randomness, Skin in the Game. All of those books. It's called an inserto. He calls his collection of books called inserto. So that's what the philosophy is. Very, very deep. Moving on. Mr. Mittal says, my brother, depends on how far they are on the loan payback cycle. This is in reference to the previous question, right? If somebody is gonna, what is that person gonna do? That makes sense. Debt first, says Mr. Abhishek Sharma. Debt first, okay. Debt first. That means bad news for the consumption economy, right? But that's not what's happening right now. We're not, people are not that, they don't have such discipline, to be honest. When free money comes, they buy more, right? uh, India's iPhone exports have crossed $10 billion, right? 75% surge in the first half of FY26, 155 for September amid production ramp up. So there are a lot of production ramp up going on. People said that iPhone's exports, the electronics exports, had gone down in August, right? We were surprised ourselves. That why did they go down in August, right? Why? But then we got to know that August is historically the month where electronics purchases in the West go down and new product cycles begin, and that refresh of the whole system takes down a lot of momentum. So August is that refresh month, but September is looking good, right? Exports, September exports were $1.25 billion of Apple, which is great news. Right? Moving on. Eli Lilly's obesity drug sales hit sweet spot, 80 crore sales, 43% sequentially rising in September. Number 2 position, 43% rising sequentially. That's just unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. So Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, all of these people, these patents expire next year, March, April, right? That's when this is going to be a generic play. A lot of money is going to be made, but not by the pharma companies, because generics don't have margins. The people who supply to pharma companies. So that's the kind of stock I am looking for. If you know anything, please let me know. Moving on, Google plans data hub in Vizag. 10 billion facility will comprise 3 centers. 1 gigawatt capacity may become operational by 2028. So Google investing $10 billion in Vishakhapatnam. That's awesome. Data drive going on. All of this is a consequence of everything that the government is trying to do as far as bringing the whole semiconductor and data and AI play to India. Is it too little, too late? I don't know. Let's find out. Moving on. Infosys has is in the news for some income tax credit lapses, right? 404 crores. So that's gonna hurt the company a little. Moving on. Nifty 50 companies Q2 profit may grow in double digits. Well, we've talked about that. Moving on. What's the time right now? It's 9:04 already. Oh my god. Self-reliance in defense linked to sovereignty, says Mr. Rajnath Singh. So Rajnath Singh sir is saying self-defense, defense ecosystem is basically sovereignty play, and self-reliance in defense means business. I hope in February when the budget comes out, they really push the defense play, right? They make a home run because that's really gonna help everybody, especially the people who are, you know, looking at starting up, creating things, because this is going to have a lot of second order effects. Moving on. Mr. Piyush Goyal says India EU trade deal will be done by the year end, and US trade deal is getting hurt because of the government shutdown. The whole Democrat Republican play that we discussed a lot about. So we've talked a lot about that. We can move forward, right? GST reforms to aid consumption, boost private capex, says Mr. Sanjay Nair. He's the ASSOCHAM chief. ASSOCHAM is the body of a lot of companies. There are a lot of bodies of companies, associations. There's CII, there's FICCI, there's ASSOCHAM. So ASSOCHAM is one of them. And he's talking about, we've been talking about for 100 days. Moving on. Center's Design Lend Incentive Scheme, DLI scheme, is helping semiconductors win over venture capital companies. Now, this headline is misleading because overall, venture capital firms, VC firms, have only invested 90 million in the last 5 years in semiconductor companies. 90 million in 5 years is not a lot of money, man. It's not a lot of money at all, right? So that is not good. But it says that it's going up, so let's see what happens. There is a news that we've been talking about, an insight that we've been discussing. We've been talking about medical tourism, right? How this is a very great opportunity, medical tourism, because there's a lot of money to be made through medical tourism. The industry is just growing in ways that nobody can understand, right? So Mr. Ankit Mehrotra and Sahil Jain have raised $4.5 million. $4.5 million is roughly 40 crores. For their venture called the Medical Travel Company. The Medical Travel Company. Well, that's not a very innovative name, but the Medical Travel Company has raised seed money of $4.5 million. Mr. Ankit Mehrotra is the founder of Dineout. Dineout was a company got acquired by Times Internet. So he's raised $4.5 million. This is gonna be a great play, right? You don't need so much of money, by the way, to build a company in this direction, because it's majorly a service play, right? It can be productized, but it is essentially a service. The money lies in the service. So let's see what happens there. But yeah, great opportunity. Medical tourism and also gaming, right? Moving on. $4.5 million. That's a lot of seed money, man. But it's gonna make a lot of money. It can, I mean. Claude AI maker Anthropic to set up India Play boost Indic AI models. The founder is here. CEO of Anthropic, Dario Omedi. He talks. Stock exchanges step up vigilance as brokers are cross-selling finance products. So, they're selling loans to buy stocks. They're selling all sorts of AMC products and so on and so forth. So stock exchanges are getting vigilant, on basically avoiding problematic cross-selling by these brokers, right? But that's not really a big issue. Moving on. Liquor outlets get to Diwali spirit, lock, stock and barrel. Retail stocking of alcohol up 25 to 30% on year as player expect tax saving to boost sales. So, what did we talk about second order effects, right? Money saved can go in directions where nothing has been done. So they didn't decrease GST on smartphones, did they? They did not. But people saved money from other areas and they started buying smartphones, right? The same thing they expect to happen with liquor. So whatever money people save by buying a biscuit, right? While buying a biscuit, they might just buy a beer or a whiskey or whatever. Or so hope these alcohol companies, which I hope doesn't happen, right? That's not going to be good news. Housing sales steady on premium push, launches slip in Q3. Of course, right? Real estate is looking at some sort of steady, right? Even though the numbers haven't declined as yet. So if you see the numbers, if you're interested, so they say the top 8 residential markets posted sales of 87,603 housing units, up 1% from year, right? 1%. New launches were down 2%. So that's housing right now in top 8. Investment offices, in offices, like however the office real estate, that's up because of GST and GCC and everything else. We've discussed that. Uh, there's a report on Delhi homes becoming community living, right? Rental scaling high instead of independent houses and builder floors. People are looking at community housing. That's obviously very interesting. A lot of action is happening as far as the real estate play is considered of the country. But what the government is trying to do is divert it away from metros. I sincerely hope that happens. The decline in housing sales and new launches in the top 8 residential markets is not a bad news, as unless it's balanced by an or offset by proportional rise outside those markets, right? So if you look at tier 2, tier 3, if they're growing, it doesn't matter if housing in the top 8 residential branches, new launches don't grow as fast, right? So that is what we believe in as far as the whole Malthusian trap is considered. What did Tucker Carlson say? Mr. Tucker Carlson said the country GDP is not a measure of how great the country is. The real great measure of how great the country is whether an average 30-year-old guy making a normal wage can buy a house, right? So that is very important. Affordable housing is very important. Moving on. This is it, It's 9/11. This brings us to the end of the 135th episode of Thinkers Frequency. Our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:12 now. We're going to punch in anytime soon. I wish you all a beautiful day, personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Let me thank Mr. Satish, Mr. Rajakumar, Mr. Abhishek Sharma, Mr. Ankit Jindal, Mr. Sumant Kumar, Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar, Mr. Nishant Mittal, of course, and everybody else who joined. I hope you had fun. I hope this added value to you. It definitely added a lot of value to me. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, as it always is. Thanks, Nishant. And Nishant, have a great day, says Mr. Sharma. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. Take care and have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.